Okay, we are live. Let's let some folks come in for a moment. Here we go. We have 17 joining us, 18.
Excellent. We'll wait one more minute. Arthur.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, you might get started. It's
Okay.
26 of us here with you, and you're good to go.
Perfect. It's 10 o'clock on Tuesday, April 14th, and I'm glad that you could be with us here again today for a weekly market update. We're going to start, we started last week with these updates, and we're going to continue to do them every Tuesday at 10 o'clock to kind of give you a synopsis of what's going on with the real estate market, especially in our local markets and even the hyper-local market. So I want to thank you for being here. We'll make this available. The recording will be available later today, and you can share it with your friends. I got a large amount of feedback from people last time. I know it was a little long, but I heard a lot of good comments. People thought it was very good information. I want to continue to provide that same sort of kind of information that's relative today. So I think what we're seeing as we're almost into the middle of this pandemic and this situation is how important home is. Where you live and the type of environment in which you're living in is more and more important in these days that we're in today. And the sense of community, where you live connected to others, is also growing in importance. And I think this is one of the lessons we're going to learn from this pandemic. And many people are sitting at home stir crazy and can't wait to get out of there and are going to go look for a home. And many people are going to look at their home and say, this is the kind of respite that I need when the world's going through total chaos. And so that's kind of the lens I want to talk about today. At Boulevard Realty and realtors across the city, we understand while our industry is essential, your safety and the safety of sellers and buyers and our agents and those associated to our industry, inspectors, appraisers, surveyors, is of the utmost importance. And while people want to look at houses, we agree that only the most essential of us should really be out performing these duties. And I've instructed our staff and our agents, do not come to the office unless it's essential. You can come to pick up a sign if you need a sign, and you can come and pick up flyers if you need flyers, but we're still taking this pandemic extremely serious, and we take the safety and the security of those who are at home and those who are out looking at homes very serious. And we've taken tremendous precautions to be safe and secure with antibacterial wipes, with hand sanitizer, wiping doorknobs as we enter and as we exit, using our mask cautiously as we can, using shoe covers when necessary, providing hand sanitizer at our listings so that when people enter and exit, that they're taking the precautions that they need to. We're asking for people showing houses not to bring unnecessary individuals. Don't bring your children or your parents or something in the first round. Be serious. Don't just look at houses for the sheer thrill of just looking at houses. It needs to be an essential activity. And there are plenty of people that really do need to sell, and there are plenty of people that really do want to buy and need to buy, and we're grateful that our industry is essential, but we do think everyone needs to remember that the safety and security of everyone, it's not about any one of us, it's about the others that we come in contact with, both physically and, like I say, just touching your mouth and then touching a doorknob and someone coming 2 hours later can greatly impact the health of our entire region. And so please be careful out there. And we're going to take tremendous caution and continue to remind ourselves and others of the need to be cautious and safe. And with that, I mean, I want to just make one small announcement. The testing has been nominal, and of course it's in the news all the time. Texas itself is 49th out of 50 in the amount of testing per capita of any state in the nation. We must do a better job of testing. And so the city of Houston has opened up as of this morning the ability to test anyone. If you want to test today, you can go get a test. You don't have to have a symptom. You don't have to have a reason. They've opened up 2 locations. All you have to do is call a number, and Aaron's going to share the number with you. You do have to register beforehand. You can't just show up. But the number of people who had been tested at the city sites, while they had 250 capacity per day, they were not reaching that capacity. So they've opened it up. They've increased the capacity to 500 people. All you have to do is call this number. They will give you a control number. You'll select a location. You'll get a time frame. You can go to Butler Stadium or Del Mar Stadium or wherever they tell you to go. This is just for the city testing sites. There are a number of testing sites. I think they're up to 9 public sites. Many of them are county, and some of them are profit or for-profit or hospital-driven tests. There are just 2 City of Houston testing sites that are available for the general population to go. So if you're inclined to want to test, all you have to do is just call and sign up, and they'll arrange for you to have a test. So I think it is certainly more important. We're now up to a little over 2,200 test capacity a day, which is significantly greater than we were 5 days ago or even a week ago. So if you're only testing 250 to 500 a day, you're not going to get that many results. So we need a greater amount of tests to get a greater amount of data, which will help determine, when, of course, we get back to any sort of opening back up the businesses and the community that we used to know. I think it is also important to know, and I visit with a number of people at the city and the county, we've been at this a couple of weeks, and I know people are extremely bored, and I know they want to get back to something normal, but we're just now reaching to near the peak. This is not the time to let your guard down. This is not the time to be reckless. This is not the time. I mean, I have my friends tell me, don't go to HEB for recreational shopping. Go to HEB or Kroger or Randall's or wherever you're going because you need something. And so I think we need to take those precautions seriously in order to flatten the curve, in order to get over some sort of hump so that we don't, get too many people infected and then too many people overwhelming the hospital system. So shout out to all those grocery workers and all of those people in the service industry, those Amazon drivers, everyone else, the restaurant workers that are working to feed us, and also, of course, the policemen, the firemen, and all of the health professionals that are doing an amazing job. And I know we're all grateful that we live in Houston, Texas today, because we have the world's best, brightest people out working for all of us. And so I just want to give a shout out to them. Most people want to know, the overwhelming question in real estate, is this a good time to buy or is this a good time to sell? And I think it just kind of depends on your situation. As we mentioned last week, the thing that we're going to continue to monitor is supply and demand. I mean, that really determines the value of anything. It is important to realize that there is absolutely no way that our industry, real estate as a whole, reacts rapidly like you're used to in the stock market. These rapid changes where the market goes up, 2,500 points or 10% or 5% or, some large number, kind of gives people the false impression that other values work similar to that. The price of bananas doesn't adjust that rapidly, nor do the prices of houses. It's just not a realistic expectation in these sort of environments. Plenty of people who would have sold their house have taken their house off the market for safety and security, because they're working at home, because they don't want to make up the bed every day, because the children are at home, because of health concerns. So that's eliminated a fair amount of options for people who wanted to buy a home. It's reduced actually the quantity that we would have normally had. And so it's the supply and demand of both the number of houses. Do we have more houses or less houses for sale? And do we have more or less people, consumers, who are wanting to buy or sell a house? And there are plenty of people today in Houston, Texas, that want to buy a house. They want to buy it at the right time. No one wants to buy a house for $500,000 if they think they can get it for $450,000 in a month or so. And I understand the pause and the concern there. But the sheer reality is based on, and I always want to say these are unprecedented times, but it's not like we don't have similar attributes to follow: a hurricane, a 9/11, a global recession, falling oil prices, a number of those sort of things give us a certain number of indications. The large number of people in rental units, like the apartment complexes, who are great consumers who want to get out of an apartment complex and into a house where they have their own yard. They don't have to walk in a hallway with people. I mean, that's pent-up demand of consumers that want to go and be home buyers or whatever. So the biggest thing to watch really truly is the amount of inventory. If the inventory increases beyond what the demand is, then of course the prices will reduce. There's hardly any doubt about those sort of things. But the reality of it is the inventory has not spiked in by any means. In reality, the opposite is there. The most important thing that I think people watching need to do is rely on a professional who can get you data so that everyone can make a decision there. There will be softenings of the market in many areas. There's no doubt. The city is very large, and there are going to be pockets that underperform and become very soft, and there are going to be pockets that are going to become more desirable and will not really see any great decline. Generally, these times have caused the time of market, the days on the market, the time to sell a house to increase. It's reasonable to expect that it's going to take a little bit longer, even if that's just a fiction of the lending ability. I mean, maybe the lenders are going to take longer, maybe the title company is going to take longer, maybe the inspections are going to take longer just because of the certain situation. So of course, that's the number one thing I think people should watch. But there are great opportunities for buyers. I was on a conversation yesterday just with a friend of a friend, and they were able to buy a house this week because there was less competition and it was cheaper than it would have been if we were not in this situation. They saw it as an opportunity, which is truly what it is for many people. If you're buying in many markets and there would have been 10 offers on a particular property, and now you're not faced with that same level of competition, you're able to buy a house that you wouldn't otherwise be able to buy. And so looking at that opportunity is really one of the things that I think you should focus on. And the fact that, yes, I mean, it's become a buyer's market. Nobody should pretend otherwise. So the sellers today are going to be more negotiable on the price, more negotiable on the repairs, more negotiable on the time frames. I think anyone that's not somewhat negotiable is probably not selling in the short term, at least, or whatever. And it's just a great opportunity for most buyers to get a tremendous interest rate. I mean, unprecedented low interest rates, and the opportunity to take advantage of those interest rates. We mentioned last time, if you wait a year but the interest rate spiked by 1.5 points, what did you really save? If you saved $10,000 or $20,000 but your monthly payment went up by $200, I'm not sure that that's a win-win for anybody. And of course, many people are moving because they have the time to do so right now. They're not as swamped with work, and they are anticipating, a return to somewhat more normal at some point in the future, whether that's 3 months or 6 months, and they probably will have a delayed amount of work that they have to spend getting caught up. And so while this, provides them an opportunity to go ahead and make the move when they would not otherwise have the time to do so. For the selling side, of course, you've got to take into consideration, is this, are you willing to go through the headache of putting your house on the market and having people come through your house? There's no way any of us would say that there's not some risk. There's got to be some risk when people are walking through your house. And if you're not comfortable with that, we have advised you and begged you and instructed you, take your home off the market. Do not sell it if you're not willing to assume some risk there, because there's just no way we could guarantee otherwise. And for those that are thinking about putting it on the market, this is your time to go and do the projects. This is the time to go repaint. This is the time to go fix your yard, go to Buchanan's and pick up some plants and remulch and, re-weather strip your door and caulk your grout. And I mean, this is the time that you have on your hands to go and do something. Decluttering is, of course, a favorite. We're passing around photos with my friends of all of our drawers. Our steak knife drawer never looked better. And so this is an opportunity to declutter the closets, get rid of some of those clothes that you don't need. There's someone else that really does need it. Do the yard work, prepare, even if you're going to put your house on the market, in the fall or later in the summer. But the reality of it is, if you have a nice home in a nice neighborhood, this is still a good time to go and sell your house. We are selling houses. It's not the time to push the market. If you have a total fixer-upper, or you have, the most expensive house in the neighborhood, that's probably not the time to go push the market by any means. But I do think if you have something a little unique, something special, something that's beautiful, a 3-car garage, a master bedroom down, a swimming pool, a yard, zoned to a great school. I mean, this is a great opportunity to go and sell your house where you have less competition than you would have otherwise had. And so we're definitely showing houses more so than you would think, but of course, much less than we would have if we'd not been in this situation. For Boulevard Realty, our showings and our inquiries are down, I would say probably 66%. When I did the ratio of the internet leads this week versus 1 year ago, we were at a little over 10,000 internet leads, people clicking on HAR, Zillow, or Realtor.com, any of those sort of deals, versus 1 year ago at this particular time, we averaged about 30,000. We have a little bit fewer listings because we've removed some listings just because people are at home with their kids or whatever. So you get a few less hits because of that thing. But in general, of course, the number of buyers is down and the number of listings is down, which has kept it moderately in balance there. And so the showing activity, because we are prioritizing, don't just show for recreational purposes. Of course, the number of showings was going to be down. And you're seeing the virtual showings would reduce the number of hits because we're emailing these blasts out and people are just watching the blast. And so you would anticipate that the number of hits on HAR.com or BoulevardRealty.com would be down a little bit just because of the activity that realtors are spending promoting their virtual listings on Facebook, on eBlast, to some of that degree. So certainly people are looking at those sort of things. People care most about this inventory, and we didn't cover it as directly. I was generic with some of the data last week, but I want to be more specific here before I get into some other generalities. And I mentioned, and we're going to put up some slides here that show certain markets or whatever. Of course, we're following months of supply of inventory, and we're studying the number of houses that are being permitted, because that's going to give us an indication a year from now or 9 months from now what's really happening. But we're truly watching the number of listings, and we're watching the number of houses getting under contract, and then what is the ratio. This was data from last week, and then I'm going to talk about data from actually just today and yesterday. But you can see, and we're tracking these areas. It's important for you to get with your real estate agent. If you're in Cinco Ranch or you're in the East End and you want to know the micro or hyper local activity of your particular market. I mean, that's why you need a real estate agent to help you with that information. But you can see when we take the Greater Heights area, which is Studewood, Shepherd, to 26th Street, to White Oak or I-10, the number of listings is down. The number of listings are down by over 500,000, or they're down overall, and they're down in Montrose, they're down in West HOU, they're down in Memorial, and they're down relatively significantly. So while the activity is down, so long as the inventory is down, you're going to have a moderately balanced marketplace here. And so these were some numbers, and we'll share these with you if you're interested later. I ran just 30 minutes ago activity just in area 9, the Heights area, greater than 500,000 to compare to 1 week ago. I'm just comparing to 1 week ago. And the reality of it is the number of, these are active listings over 400,000, where there were 445 last Tuesday, today there's 452. That's about statistically the same. Where there were about 44 properties either under contract, today there are 15 in the option period, 116 properties that are pending or sell pending, and that's a pretty big increase over 1 week ago. And we have closed 23 more houses than we had closed last Tuesday. I mean, that's a pretty good number also. When I look at what closes over $500,000 in the Heights area, on average, we averaged 98% of the list price to the sales price. So I have all the houses right here. 2 of those houses, 1405 Arlington was $1,130,000. They got $1,000,001. 1427 Ashland was $1,445,000. They took $1,004,000. But the average house actually got about 100%. On Ebony, there was one for $815,000. It got $815,000. On Lamonte, there was one for $825,000. They took $826,000. On 24th Street, there was an $829,000. They got $829,000. And many of these houses truly were still at 100 or 101%, both in Oak Forest and in the Greater Heights area. So very few houses. 1227 Rutland was $689,000. They took $660,000. But another one on 24th Street was $649,000. It took $657,000. So you average those out. I mean, it was 97.79% of the list price to the sales price. I understand plenty of these buyers want to offer $100,000 less here, $200,000 less, or $50,000 less on $450,000. And I mean, if your realtor will present your offer, there's no way that we're not going to present your offer, but you need to have a realistic basis of what's going on. I don't see in any of these markets where people are taking significant reductions yet. They're realistic. If you're selling a house today, you need to be realistic that, yeah, I mean, there's not going to be as many buyers, and they're going to try a price point that probably they wouldn't have tried a month or 2 ago. But there's very few of these sellers that are willing to just take that large kind of reduction. I'm just not seeing statistically. In area 16, the numbers were virtually the same. I mean, if you did the ratio, the number of listings was down just a little bit. And if I look at the number of solds and the list price to sales price in area 16, and I did, this was last week on Tuesday. This week, today, the number of listings was, I wrote it right here, 414 versus 411. So there's 3 more houses. But the number of pending sales, again, were up to 74, not 24. And we had sold another 10 houses in the last week. In that week, the average list price to sales price was 97.49. And the reality of that was one house was $2.6 million, and it took $2.3 million, 88%. If I take that out, 5 of the other 9 sold at 100 or 100.52%. So the $499,000 house got 502,500. The $445,000 house got 537. A 599 took 599. An 800 took 800. An 850 took 850. I mean, not steep reductions in list price to sales price. I think what's selling are the nicest houses. I want to be clear. I think the nicest houses have, don't have to reduce their price that much. I don't think there's that many buyers for fixer-uppers or projects or houses that have pretty good deficiencies today. I think when there's less demand, you're less likely to buy the home on the railroad track, or buy the house with no yard, or buy the house with 20-year-old roof and air conditioning and countertops. I mean, that was already the case before we started this scenario. So, I mean, the consumer today who has money, who has job security, probably does not want a project. They do not want to spend their time fixing up a home by any means. I just don't see that anywhere. There will be some investors that will pick up some houses at some point. I think that we're a ways away from that, who might be willing to do a flip of something. But the consumer today is not that consumer. The consumer today wants a nice house. They're in an apartment, they were already selling their house, they were already relocating, they already wanted to be inside the loop, they had a reason to buy. They're upside. It's the time for them to upside, or the time for them to downside. So there are certainly those scenarios where people are going to want to buy and sell, but like I say, it's probably not the time to push the market or something. So take advantage of this downturn to get your house in the best light, and price it appropriately or whatever. Yeah, here's someone that had a tear down and they got 18 offers, and so I still think there's plenty of people that are in the market to buy. There's going to be plenty of, I think even the builders, I think it's a great opportunity to go buy a lot and build a house and be ready to market it a year from now. So I have no indication that it's not a good time to do that.
We did get a question too, specifically about Woodland Heights. Is it a good time to sell a Woodland Heights house to a developer who will tear your house down?
I look at the modern bungalows of the world that are going to have 3 to 4 closings in the next 30 days, and each of those houses, are on the higher end of the marketplace, and we managed to find buyers who could get loans and could close on them at prices that there was no reduction or no sort of concession in the last 6 weeks or something. So as Modern Bungalow sells those 4 houses, they're going to need something to do in 2021. So yes, I believe that there's plenty of developers out there who are willing to buy a home in Woodland Heights and develop the home in Woodland Heights. I think the smaller lots, the 5,000 square foot lots, have suffered a little bit compared to the 6,600, and there was a little bit of unrealistic pricing between the 5,000 square foot lots and those that were deeper by 25 feet or 32 feet or wider on the corner or something of that nature. I think the Aspire, former Whitestone houses, or the people that are trying to get $1.7 million and $1.8 million for those houses, and they flooded the market with, 10 of them, are probably going to find some softening. I personally didn't like them because they're on a slab, but that's just my personal preference. I think they should have built pier and beam houses, but like I say, that's just clearly an editorial. But I look at the Merrill house that was $2 million that got under contract, and they had actually even manipulated the square footage. They'd added the garage apartment square footage. It wasn't 4,200 square feet. It was 3,600 square feet. And the appraisal came in $75,000 less, I believe, to $1,950,000, something of that nature, I heard. But I think that transaction's going on just fine. It's an oversized lot, with a nice house and a garage apartment, walking distance to Travis Elementary. It was, I managed to get a house for $1.7 million-ish, walking distance to Travis Elementary, to someone who had kids who want to walk to school, under contract this week. So there are plenty of buyers who want to live in Woodland Heights. It's extremely desirable. It's going to be desirable the end of this year. It's going to be desirable in 2021. So I think the short answer is yes. Is it a little you're not going to get a premium that you would have gotten maybe even 6 months ago, but I still think there's a buyer for that property and there's someone that wants to live there. If it's not a true developer, it's a custom buyer. And I think there's, I'm building a house, and so I'm telling you, I think the construction costs are going to get a little more reasonable in order to build a custom house. I think plenty of even developers are going to slide a little bit just to diversify their risk and do a custom house versus a spec house. I have plenty of builders that'll build a custom house for you if you need a builder. And I will continue to convince those developers, choose the best lot and build a great house, and I'll find you a buyer for that 1 year from now. I'm sure of it. So I think the short answer was yes. The biggest short-term problem that we're going to face for a while is the uncertainty of loans that are not backed by the government. So there are conforming loans and non-conforming loans. So these loans in Texas at about $510,000, when you start mortgaging more than that amount, the world is more uncertain. And when there's uncertainty, there's constant change and evolution. So you read about it in the papers every day. This is Wells Fargo. Chase yesterday nationwide went to a higher standard. When there's higher risk, they're going to take greater caution in loaning money. And I think that's the case with everyone. We had gotten a little relaxed when times are booming. Everyone kind of relaxes a little bit. They had a good article today. The average first-time homeowner in last year only put down 7% money. This is across the nation. And the average second-time homeowner only put down about 16%. That was a national statistic. You're seeing what Chase did yesterday, raising their credit standards, minimum 700 credit score, and only 20% loans, at this point forward. Now, they're always going to change, but it's a function of, is there a market for those loans after they're made? Can they sell them in the secondary market to wherever they normally would sell them? And there doesn't appear to be as strong a market for that because just risk averse. So, but there are people who are making jumbo loans. Jumbo would be over $510,000, and we constantly are looking for people, and we'll be able to provide these resources. I kind of verified with these yesterday. Some of them can do a first, if you're at $1 million, TAF can do a first lien for 510, a second lien for the 250 or whatever, and get someone close to 20% down with a loan. Allegiance, I went back and forth with Scott Lester yesterday. They're doing jumbos, but they're only doing jumbos with 30% down, and they're financing 70%. And of course, that interest rate was 4.65 or higher. When people read about 3% interest rates, they want 3% money. I don't know of a lot of 3% money out there for jumbo loans, but there are some. I mean, it's a competitive industry. It's constantly changing, but we've seen a number of examples where lenders just get out of that market altogether. We were under contract on a relatively large house, and it was set to close, and the day before closing, the lender says, sorry, we're no longer doing those mortgages. I have a client in this exact same scenario, was going to put 10% down on basically $1 million, and that program is no longer available with that lender. Now, are we able to find a different lender? You hope so. But that's an example. I mean, the mortgage industry is going to be in a constant flux here for a bit, and just prepare for it. More people may do these FHA loans. There's a loan limit for the FHA and for the VA, so they're not going to work on the very high-end houses by any means, so keep that in mind. And FHA and VA, while are wonderful programs nationwide, they work well with new, modern, totally great houses. They don't work well with old houses typical of the Heights or Timber Grove or something with an old breaker box. You can run into a fair number of problems just through the appraisal or inspection issues with those loans that you would not normally get into a conventional loan. So make sure that your real estate professional understands the difference, and it's just giving you good advice. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't take those properties or those lenders. You just need to know what it is that you're getting yourself into. So prepare. I mean, prepare for some delays. I mean, we're trying to tell everyone to be realistic. If you're a buyer Do not create the undue pressure of assuming that you're closing on May 15th and it's really going to happen on May 15th. What is your contingency plan if it gets delayed through no fault of anyone? Could be your lender, could be the surveyors, could be the seller is sick, could be anything. You have no idea what could cause the delay. And same with the buyer. Don't get yourself into some situation where you think it's closing on May 15th and you don't have a backup plan to adjust for it not having some delay. Some delay is not a day, it is 30 days. If you don't have a plan for what happens in a case of a delay for 30 days, you are really creating a certain amount of chaos that's totally unnecessary. So good communication is the key. Now, every buyer that's buying today wants to get in the house as quickly as possible, and every seller today wants to sell as quickly as possible for fear that, you know, the market goes to hell in a handbasket over here. So, I mean, I understand the inherent stress. I'm just a realist. Be realistic that delays are inevitable in these uncertain times. And it's not just, you can't pressure someone. We have a scenario, and it's a lease of a high rise, and the lease ends on the 15th, except the high rise does not allow any movers to come and move anyone during this period of shelter in place. So leaving is not an option. It's not an option. You can't do it. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. It's just, that's the scenario. You can extend the lease, you can bitch all you want, you can talk about some sort of eviction. There are no evictions this month, you know, and so you just need to be realistic of just dealing with the situation that we have at hand. These are unprecedented times. Be prepared for unprecedented situations that come up as a result of that. People that want to buy a house are going to buy a house. People that want to sell a house are going to sell a house. You're going to need to find a way to get to the common goal line that's as win-win for possible is everyone involved or whatever. The emotion and the economic frustration over $100 here, $500 there is really not worth it in today's market. And so I think if you're one of these buyers that, you know, really wants to take advantage of someone, don't buy. Just if you really, the people that write the little letters and say the market's going to hell, so you should take less for your property today, really need to get out of the marketplace, get out of the way. That if you really believe the market's going to hell, you really shouldn't buy anything. You should really wait till it reaches some other bottom of the marketplace. Don't just, you know, the fear and doom and gloom is really not doing any of us any good. I do not believe in that fear and doom and gloom. I'm a realist. There'll be some softenings. I'm a realist. Some people are going to be hurt. I don't have any indication that major populations are going to move out of the city of Houston, that we're going to have some mass exodus out of these areas, or that we're going to have a huge supply of new houses flooding the market with no one to buy them. I think there's going to be some softenings, but I think there's a realistic expectation that many people are going to want to buy a home and see it as the opportunity that it is. And so preparing for those delays is foremost on everyone's mind. We have a COVID-19 addendum, have someone explain it to you if you need to understand exactly what that is, but do plan on the delay. You're seeing more and more virtual showings, virtual closings. Definitely every industry is going through this. I mean, I'm in Zoom world over here all the time. And so you're gonna see more and more of those changes. You know, if you're used to going to a closing and taking a bunch of people, I mean, you're not gonna have that anymore. You're gonna take extreme precautions when showing houses. We have inspections tomorrow on one of my houses. The inspectors makes it clear. Absolutely no one in the house. We're going to use shoe covers, we're going to use gloves, we're going to use hand sanitizer, but I'm not putting myself at risk by having the seller, who is working at home because of a certain situation, is not going to do an inspection when people are there. I have another scenario. We had some repairs based on the foundation. You get the John Feasters of the world to come and give you the estimates virtually or whatever, but they won't schedule any work. They're not scheduling one foundation work, certainly not in April, and they're not even scheduling anything in May or June until we're out of this shelter in place sort of thing. And so, of course, that's going to delay that repair. My buyer and seller were realistic. If it's $2,500 kind of estimate. There's going to be some other damage. We asked for $3,500 because we're not able to do the work until months after the closing. That's probably a realistic expectation. And you know what? The seller was realistic also. So the buyer's assuming a little bit of risk with sheetrock damage and painting and delays and having people in their house after they move in. But waiting, I mean, having that work done before closing just wasn't possible. My people are pregnant. They want their house now. They don't want to wait 2 months. They want to get situated before the babies do. And it seemed like a reasonable expectation that you could work some form of compromise. This seller had already moved on to another home, and so it seemed to work out fine. I mean, reasonable expectations are going to work just fine. Unreasonable expectations probably are not. I've had a number of people talk to me this last week about foreclosures and what do we think about foreclosures, and we will continue to update the world on foreclosures. Are there going to be more foreclosures? I had been speaking about foreclosures, especially the number of flipping kind of houses as a result of Harvey. The immediate foreclosures didn't happen. Of the large foreclosures that we are having happen in Harris County, many of them still are a result of Harvey today. But all foreclosures for April were canceled. The expectation 100% is that there'll be no foreclosures in May either. So you're bumping all of these sort of things. 75% of all foreclosures in Harris County are tax foreclosures. They're, people who have not paid taxes on property for a long period of time. I mean, there aren't, as a percentage, that many mortgage or foreclosures on loans. And I'm not saying that there won't be some increase. We will monitor these sort of things. I do not anticipate in the middle of the Heights or Woodland Heights or Montrose that there's going to be a fair amount. There were never a fair amount of them in the last 25 years. There just haven't been that many scenarios where people borrowed 107% and just decided not to make a payment and it gets foreclosed on. Most people have been in a house, and if they can't pay for it, they probably can sell it. Maybe not as high as they think that they should, but they're able to sell it and get out from under their mortgage. So I haven't had a short sale since 2008 or 9. I'm not saying we're not going to have one, but we will monitor them. But for the people that ask, I really think your inquiry needs to be in September, October, November, December, and it's probably not going to be single family residents in the Heights or Montrose or Timber Grove or Oak Forest. It's probably going to be in underperforming areas and maybe some investors or builders that the bank had to take back the property because of unrealistic expectations or something. Yes, Sunday when I biked, because you weren't able to bike on the hike and bike trails, you were forced to bike on the streets. I went through a lot of streets, and there are a lot of townhouses. There are a lot of townhouses in the East End and Midtown and all across the city, and I am not sure there's enough buyers for all of these townhouses that are all the same, that are 3-story, that have an unrealistic price, that absolutely have no yard whatsoever, and really aren't even the best built things on earth. I would think the townhouse market might soften, certainly in the future. Of course, people are going to want to be close to Memorial Park, or they want to be close to a hike and bike trail or something, but it looks like we've got more townhouses than we've got buyers. That's the example of supply and demand that I think perhaps people are going to have to be a little more negotiable with. And certainly if you have a 20-year-old townhouse and you're competing with the brand new one, the brand new one's going to get a little cheaper than it would have been 2 months ago also. So that's kind of the state of where we're at today. Focusing on supply and demand, list price to sales price. You're going to see a little softening of the negotiation, but not, be realistic. I got 2 offers on a house yesterday that's an expensive house or whatever. One's $75,000 off, the other's $200,000 off. Look, I'm not even going to talk to the people who are $200,000 off. I'm offended. The sellers are offended. That's the most important thing, or whatever. My sellers barely want to talk to the people that offered $75,000 less. It's probably a realistic expectation to start there, but they have absolutely no incentive to sell a house anywhere near $75,000 off. It's an expensive house. They owe very, very little. They have total job security. They want to sell if the market's right. If not, they'll just take it off and sell it at another particular time. So I don't think that's realistic. And I think agent one I had a conversation with. My people want to sell. We're nice people, but we have absolutely no incentive to take a low offer. The other people didn't ask. They should have probably asked before they waste all that time writing an offer. Communication, how motivated are we? I am out showing all the time too, and I asked, are people motivated? And I had a good talk with Patrick Burbridge the other day. I think every seller has to be a little motivated. You have to be a little negotiable, more so than you would have. No one should probably expect 100% of the asking price today. But we have houses. I mean, we're talking about this $775,000, $800,000 market in the Heights. We have 3-bedroom, 2-bath with some other redeeming quality, a pool or a garage apartment. I think there are plenty of buyers for that house. I think there's plenty of them out there. I spoke to someone yesterday with a bungalow, a very nicely remodeled bungalow, all white and gray and cute, just like everyone in the world wants. There are plenty of buyers for that bungalow. There's going to be plenty of buyers for this bungalow in 3 months also. A totally remodeled bungalow in the Heights on a full lot. Look, guys, there's just not that many of them. And there's certainly not that many for sale. And there are plenty of people that are going to want to live in that bungalow. There's hundreds of thousands of them in an apartment somewhere that want out of that apartment, that want into that bungalow, that want to work at home from that bungalow, that want to have a baby in that bungalow, that want to garden in that bungalow, that want to be nurtured by those hardwood floors and that crown molding and those windows. And it's desirability, it's the feeling, and it's where I started this talk today. Where you live and your home and your environment, it's important to your health, your sanity, just getting through the day these days. And people are going to recognize, I look at the messaging for the national companies again, and that's what they're saying. Your quality of life, you can do something about. You can't do anything about the pandemic. You can't do anything about the world, but where you live and how you live is something that you can do something about. And I think people want to live in a high quality, might be smaller, might be cheaper than it would have been before, might be more conservative. They're going to want to live someplace that's inviting, that they want to retreat to, that they feel nurtured by. I believe they want to live in a community that's connected, that's close to healthy environments like hike and bike trails or walking trails like Heights Boulevard or other things, pocket parks throughout the suburbs or whatever can work just as well. I mean, I think people want a respite. They want to turn off the TV. They don't want to listen to the news all the time. They get tired of social media. They don't want a bunch of fear mongering. They're tired of the bickering on the national level. You know what's pretty nurturing? Getting you some gardenias from Buchanan's and putting some dirt into a pot and sitting there and watching your endeavor afterwards. It's a pretty good environment to be in these hectic days. So with that, I mean, I just think we'll continue to focus on these issues: supply and demand, the lending world, changes that come to the industry. I know maybe I'm a little more positive than some other people, but I believe Houston's a great place to live, work, and play. I believe home ownership is the right thing for me and many other people. I don't want to be a tenant. I do believe homes and rentals are great investments. I never really have understood the stock market or some of those other things. I understand a duplex and a triplex and where it is and how much land it sits on and what's its location to other things. And so it's a good time to invest. It's a good time to buy. It's a good time to live in a home. It's a good time to be in Houston, Texas. So I'm happy to answer any questions if we have any. I don't know, Aaron, do we have any?
None in our little chat box. Kelly Reynolds, did you have a question? I see you have your hand raised and you can speak it if you'd like.
Who's this?
Kelly Reynolds, you still with us?
I see Kelly, but the volume is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
No, I was just in the beginning pushing buttons. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're doing a great job. I think it's excellent information, and I appreciate all that you do for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for being here today.
I appreciate it.
Okay, until next week, like I say, we'll put this out, make it available. If you want to share it with your friends, please feel free to do so, and we'll provide new information next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Thank you all very much for being here today.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.